Oh, let me just get the piece of the right mouse for the right computer. Brilliant. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Troy. Dr. Troy Hall is transforming organizations through talent retention. He's featured on the Today Show, ABC, Beyond the Business Radio Show, and CEO World. Dr. Troy is an award-winning strategist, radio show host, speaker, author, and talent retention expert. Welcome to the show, Dr. Troy.
Well, thank you, Nigel. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So tell us a little bit about you. Where you from? Obviously, from your accent, some people will guess where you might have grown up, but maybe not where you are.
Well, I grew up in a small town in West Virginia. So I came from a very poor family there and had opportunities because my mom and dad suggested that you can be what you want to be, but you need to focus on what that is and be the best at it. And so it really provided me an opportunity, and I have just worked in business for about 45 years, last 26 years C-suite. I run my own company. I do what I do is I help guide leaders to retain their talent by infusing cohesion into their culture so they can create these safe workspaces where people have a sense of belonging, value, and shared mutual commitment. And the work is based off of my Ph.D., which is in Global Leadership and Entrepreneurship. And I had my dissertation in group dynamics with an emphasis on cohesion, which is hence why I was able to release the best-selling title, Cohesion Culture, Proven Principles to Retain Your Top Talent. And that serves as the basis for all of the work that I do.
Brilliant. So obviously, it's funny actually, just on that, just made me think when you said West Virginia there, the dulcet tones of Olivia Newton-John popped in my head singing Country Roads. So it's just the first thing that popped in my mind. I was a big fan of her when I was younger. So we will go down rabbit holes, no doubt.
That's okay.
One of the things that obviously, as I've said to you before in our little chat, when I saw you and I saw your expertise in talent retention and the point where we are now, we're recording this now in May 2022 for the listeners and viewers there. Obviously, there's lots and lots of stuff in social media, lots of stuff around the Great Resignation, as it's being coined. I know a couple of days ago in the UK, whilst we've got there's a lot of things about cost of living. Some figures came up that the employment rates were a 48-year low or something like that. And I'm guessing similar sort of things are happening around the world at different points, maybe different countries, different things. But there is the pandemic that we've all hopefully well on the way out of now has created a lot of change in what is expected from an employer and what is expected and what employees want. In recent weeks in the UK, I've seen multiple areas around the British government talking about getting people back into offices. People like Alan Sugar saying that people are lazy for not working in the summer in, I can't remember, Goldman Sachs or one of the big ones. Quite a few clickbait headline grabbers, I think, in some cases, but it seems to be this topic of the change in the workplace and the change in what we expect as employees and what employers are. Some are grasping and running with, and some are a little slower to jump at. So getting you on to talk about this, and I should shut up a little bit in a minute, is great. And it's kind of, do you just want to talk about, because I know you mentioned that it's not something that you just dreamt up a couple of days ago. It's something that you've been passionate about and working through for many, many years.
Yeah, I saw the trends back in 2019 when I released the book. I saw the trends that there was very little information out there about talent retention. There was a lot of information about how you might train an individual or the talent acquisition part and all those, but very little pieces of literature was really around how do organizations keep the talent. It's almost as though they were very content with a revolving door or an open backdoor philosophy, that they would focus all their energies on bringing people in, but they would run through them. They would fizzle through those individuals or let them leave. And I felt that that's a tremendous expense to an organization to do that. And why not, if you're going to spend the time wooing somebody to come to your organization, why wouldn't you consider them top talent and do everything you can do to keep them? And so philosophically, there's several things here that I want to unpack from your entry comments into this conversation. One is, I don't think it's the Great Resignation, which was really fun, and I understand why it was created, but it's now the recalibration. So I speak about it being the Great Recalibration, because what it really happened is those individuals, last year, 48 million people quit their jobs, but they didn't stay home and eat potato chips and stream their favorite shows on some platform, some streaming platform. What they did is they said, I want to reinvent where I do work and how I do it.
Yeah.
And so now you have organizations who have to figure out how to keep up with that. And what the pandemic did was it trained people, it trained companies. As a matter of fact, you can go back and historically look that most organizations in those 2 years set records for the money that that organization made, for the success that that organization made. And those individuals were not in the current workplace. Now, I want to make sure that anyone listening understands. I think that it's important for the organization to decide where work could be done and how it could be done. But I don't believe it's a hard line. I do believe that there is an opportunity for flexibility in it. And that's what we know is needed. Today's marketplace, one of the key expectations is what we refer to as this entrepreneurial spirit, which means that the individual wants to have flexibility in where they work, the locations, how they work. They want to have specific autonomy. They want to know what their role in their job is, and they want to be free to go do it. They don't want somebody standing over top of them. They want leaders who will manage the work they do, not the time they're in the seat. And so what we're also seeing is we're fighting against this sort of idea that the only way we can have culture is if we bring everybody under the same roof. Well, I have a philosophical view about that. And what I say, and also the other thing is, if we don't bring them under the same roof, we have to pay them enough money. We have to woo them with money. And I will say this, if you have to buy the talent, you will continue to buy the talent. And for me, culture is a result of how you treat people, not the treats you give them.
Yeah, I get that. I think it's interesting what you say there is that people might arrive for money. There's a certain level that people will expect, and kind of grass is always greener. But as you say, it's that opportunity to develop, that opportunity to make a difference, that opportunity to be your own person is so important.
Nigel, let's face it. People have left organizations for money for centuries, right? It's not something brand new that just started this year or the last couple of years.
No.
But the data does not support that that's the primary reason people are leaving. As a matter of fact, there was an MIT Sloan report that was just done by these three key researchers. And what they did is they reviewed 35 million online profiles of individuals who left a job and identified why they left. Number one, they quit the supervisor.
Yeah.
They left the company because of how they were treated or mistreated.
Yeah.
That's still the number one reason. Pay was number 16 on the list. So if you stop and you want to say, oh, people are leaving because they're getting more money and they're going here, well, it's an opportunistic environment. That's what capitalism is. It's opportunistic. So if you go to find a better job and better income, then that's fine. But what stimulates people to leave is how they're treated within the organization or how they're mistreated within the organization. So part of my role is to guide leaders to infuse this concept of cohesion into their cultures so that they can change toxic cultures. See, that's why there's 34 million people left. They left because it was a toxic culture. They didn't feel like they were connected with their supervisor. They didn't have any opportunity for advancement. And by the way, 63% of all people in organizations seek growth, development, and advancement. And the other 37% want it too. They're just not as vocal about it as the other 63%.
Yeah.
And so and also whether or not the individual had the resources to do the job that they wanted. So those are things that created this toxic environment that they left. So those 34 million people actually put up with toxic environments for a long time before they finally decided to leave. And what happened with the pandemic is, instead of people being limited by a geographic area, we are now no longer limited by four walls. So individuals who may have been able to only think of working at a company that was in a homogenous community where they lived could now, through the internet, expand outside of their four walls and go elsewhere. And so we saw a lot of movement for that. We also found that when leaders were very hard pressed to say, if you don't come back into the office, we're not treating you like that employee, we're only going to promote people who are sitting in the seats. All of those leaders who may have thought they were grabbing attention grabbed it in the wrong way.
Yeah.
They have all backpedaled. All those stories have all backpedaled from doing it. I have found very few leaders who have held firm to that. What I do believe is that leaders within the organization should be flexible, and they should think about, if work can be done in different locations, then they should figure out how to make it happen. It's just simple as that. It's not up to the employee to say, look, I don't want to work, I don't want to sit in the seat, I want to work from home. And the company says, well, I appreciate that, but you can't do that because that work has to be done here. And the person says, well, then I'm going to quit. That's fine, but they're not quitting because that company won't create a remote option for them. It's that the remote option that they want isn't available. Yeah. It's no different than if, hey, the job I want to do is sell peanuts, and what you're actually producing is something other than peanuts, and you go like, well, then I have to go to another job. Okay, so you go to another job and you do that. So that's really what we're seeing in this, what I refer to as that great recalibration.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Before we move on, I just got someone at my door asking for their phone to be unlocked, which I thought I'd already done. Apologies.
No problem.
Problems of teenagers. And I could have done it while talking to you if I hadn't put my phone up there, because then I'd have to reach across and it would just, I couldn't surreptitiously do it. Apologies again. Come on. So my eldest is looking after the little one, so because my wife's out tonight.
Okay.
Right, back in the room. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to think of the last bit that you just said then.
I referred to it, I wrapped everything up around the great recalibration.
That was it, yeah. So with this recalibration, as you describe it, I think I like the comment. It's kind of just moving, in some ways, moving the pieces around. It's like one of those little games, isn't it? With the 8 tiles in the 9 holes in some ways. And I do think it's the hybrid working thing. I suppose that you've got a number of things that will make people think they would want to leave, but it's not hard, as you say, it's not big enough for them to go, right, I'm going to up sticks and move to another city, to another country. And as you say, that flex now, so those things that are, it's weighing up those pros and cons, isn't it? And that barrier to leaving has reduced with the companies that are making those remote roles available, are being flexible. And I think that my own personal situation in my company is very, very strong, very forward thinking on things like this. And I actually saw something the other day, and I put a note saying it is kind of, some organizations, and historically we've got this and it's still there, is kind of the dark satanic Mills approach of, if I can't see you working, you're not working. And it's all about trust. But the thing is, there will be people who are no good at working at home. They will go home, they will work from home, and they will be not as productive as they are in the office. But there are also people who will be working from home and not be very productive, and they would not be very productive in the office, but they would be visible, and therefore people wouldn't realize they weren't being productive, because it kind of goes to that point now where you're the remote working is that the output is what you see, and that's all you see, and it's kind of like you go, notwithstanding a few video calls and things, and that's easier to focus on, the output being there and not being blinded by the person being there and going, oh yeah, they're all right, they're in every day, they're bang on time. And it comes around about getting that person who does that work well. And I always talk about performance management being, management of poor performance, not performance management, because that's all another topic.
That's another topic for another day.
Yeah, that's a long topic to talk about. But poor performance management is something that most organizations sit there and go, right, let's just make a blanket rule for everyone to stop these things that we're seeing happening, because that's easier than dealing with and identifying the small number, the minority who are performing poorly, because it makes it hard. You've got to train the managers properly. You've got to set the expectations of what you want from someone in their outputs. Whereas if you just do a blanket thing of you've got to be in at 9 and you're not allowed to leave at 5 until 5, and then you can see what they're doing, it makes it easier to manage that.
Absolutely. That's exactly where the conversation is coming from. And it's been somewhat shielded by the concept of saying, but our culture will be eroded if we don't bring everybody back together. But the reality is, it's like I said before, the culture is about how you treat people. It's not whether people are all under the same roof or not. Yeah. So your culture is a combination of your rituals, your traditions, your customs, it's your language, it's your symbols. All those things create the culture, not only for what we have in society, but it's the same thing for work. And realistically, it's taking a look and challenging ourselves to say, how can we do this today? And what can we get from making this sort of paradigm shift? And are we using the technology that's available to us to really make it happen? I mean, when the pandemic occurred, it was a crisis management decision. I mean, many organizations simply had employees unplug their computers, pack them up in their car, take them home, and figure out a spot at home where they can reset. But if you're more forward thinking, you're starting to evolve that process, and you're evolving it to, the different types of technology and the software that's available. And you can track whether people are being productive or not being productive. But what we're seeing in the workforce is they want to be managed based on the work that's being done or the quality of the work, the completed work, not on how long it took them to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
And it is really just a mindset change. And for organizational leaders who sort of fight that, they're going to be in a struggle to retain their talent, because that talent will then be forced to go elsewhere. And if you start penalizing people because they're not in the office, then you're not appealing to the fact that people want growth, development, and advancement. And all of the work around diversity, equity, and inclusion, how does all of that stand up if you're now going to marginalize a person who works remotely against a person who's in the office? I mean, there's just all these things don't really make sense for organizations to take that type of an approach. So part of the work that I do when working with leaders is to help them assess the culture within their organization, allow them to take the strategic framework of cohesion, which is belonging, value, and shared mutual commitment, and lay it over top of their company so that they can see the areas where they might need to make some changes. When it comes to belonging, it's not just whether a person feels like they fit in, because some people can fake it to fit in. It's a matter of the fact that they believe that where they're working is a special place. They promote it, they tell people they're proud of where they work, and they're also included. So the belonging part not only says, do I feel like this is a special place where I'm working, and I'll promote and talk about it, but I've been included. So to make this sense to those people listening, it's kind of like this. If I invite you to a party, then you have a sense of belonging because, hey, I'm with the cool kids. I got an invitation to the party. but you don't truly believe that you fully belong until when you get to the party, I make sure that you know where the food is. If there's music, I get you up on the dance floor. So the party invitation is the first part of belonging. The engagement of you in the party is now the inclusion.
Yeah,
And
I get
Simon
that.
Sinek tells us, he says that, it's unnatural to have this sense of belonging, but it's available in all cultures. And I've had the privilege of traveling to over 60 countries. And I will tell you that in these cultures, people want to feel connected to something. It's part of our inherent DNA. We want to belong. We want to affiliate. We want to make sure that we're with someone who has the similar thinkings that we do. That's not uncommon. What's uncommon is that when people isolate themselves, that's an anomaly, that's an outlier.
Yeah.
But for the most of us, we do want to interact with people. And we can interact either personally, and we have a lot of preferences of personal interaction, but there is a lot of individuals who can interact through some sort of technology. I mean, I'll give you in this example. My wife and I will be married 45 years this coming Saturday. We started our
Congratulations.
relationship. Oh, thank you. We started our relationship on the phone because we didn't live in the same community. We didn't go to the same school. And we were on
Yeah.
the phone every night. We used technology 45 years ago
Yeah.
to create a relationship that has lasted this long. So for me, I'm sort of like, you gotta cut some break here on whether or not you think you can
Yeah.
make this happen.
Yeah. I think I was going to say people confuse difficulty in maintaining a relationship with it not being possible. It might be
Correct.
you've got to work at it harder about it. You've got to think. It's like running an online meeting. Yeah, it's not as easy as controlling a meeting when you've got everyone in the room. But because
Yes.
it takes more to think about it, you've got to think about what you're doing. And again, it's a bit like that poor performance management. It's about thinking about what you're going to do. And like you say, you would have been making yourself available, going to maybe you had a phone, or maybe you had to go down to a phone box somewhere, because I know that's kind of what it's like in some cases, where
Yeah.
you do that and you'd have a long distance phone call to build that relationship, stood in a freezing cold thing. But that's harder. It's much easier ways to do it.
Absolutely, but it can be done.
Yeah.
And we go further and talk about like value. So value, obviously, in the way you treat people, you have trust and respect. But the value of cohesion, or the value element of cohesion, says that I do meaningful work, that what I'm doing matters, it makes a difference. People want to know that what they're doing goes beyond just making a paycheck.
Yeah.
Even though they know they need it for a paycheck, and they might feel like, oh gosh, this is a job I have to do. But imagine what it would be like if that individual felt that that job was meaningful. And many times it's up to the organization to make that job meaningful. And oftentimes the reason it's not meaningful is because they haven't created it. They haven't made that available. They've made it up to the individual to see that, oh, my job in the assembly line is valuable. Instead of the leader, instead of the supervisor, making sure that that person understands that what you're doing today, how it contributes to somebody else downstream.
Yeah.
And how it then continues not only downstream, but also outside of the four walls, that what you're doing really, truly makes a difference. We all seek purpose. We want to know that there's value in who we are as human beings. And that is an important aspect of this cohesion concept. And then the last is shared mutual commitment. And this is where most organizations mess it up. The shared mutual commitment is making sure that the employee understands where their future is first before you ask them to provide some desired outcome. Because the whole element that supports, or the whole leadership concepts that support this elements of belonging, value, and shared mutual commitment comes from transformative leadership. And in transformation, it always comes when the leaders think of others first and then self.
Yeah.
So what you're asking, or what I'm helping the organizations do, is make sure that they provide a career path for these individuals, and make sure that it's part of the orientation process or part of the acquisition process. Make sure people know where they are. Remember, they're coming in. I told you 63% of them want growth, development, and advancement.
Yeah.
Not all of them want to be the CEO. Not all of them want to be in charge, but they want to know that they have a future. Because when I know that I have a future, I am no longer in this mode of protection, privacy, security, threatened. I'm now protecting. Because if you want people to move further into their thought process, you have to create that opportunity for belonging and self-actualization. And it will not happen when people are feeling threatened. And so by understanding where their future is, it gives me perspective as to where we are. So those are some of the initial things that I help organizations do. And in the book, the first 2 chapters are dedicated to the leadership, because if you've heard things I've been talking about today, it's about the mindset of the leader. If the leader's not right, it doesn't matter what happens after that. The second 2 chapters, or the second part of the book, is about the culture. What do you do to support the culture? What do you need to have in place? What does it matter? And then the last 2 portions, or the last 2 chapters, and the third portion of the book is how do you bring it to life? Real life examples of things that you can actually do that will make a difference. So that is, really how I've been approaching this conversation of infusing cohesion into organizations, focusing around belonging, value, shared mutual commitment, and helping them do the things that are right for them, and really customizing it to that individual company.
Brilliant. It makes me, because I had I don't know if you know a guy called Colin D. Ellis. I've had talked to him. He did a book about culture himself a couple of years ago, and he talked about the fact that you, as a leader, you can influence but not control the culture. And some people, it's the beatings will continue until morale improves kind of scenario, isn't it? It's that you've got to make, and I love the thing that you talked about at the time was the fact that you can have a really strong cultural bond between a group of people, because once you get to a certain size within an organization, you break up into those component parts that have their own identities, as you talk about. That kind of, which I think I read something many years ago about, but like when it gets to 120, 150, something like that, it's harder to see itself as a unit, and it breaks into smaller units, and then as it grows bigger, again you get that fracturing. You have a small team on it's our bank of desks, that's our team, it might fracture into, and that group can have really strong cohesion, I suppose, is the thing, between themselves, but it might not be positive for the organization. They may die in a ditch for each other to stop something happening in the organization, but
exactly.
But the culture is strong, because culture isn't a positive or negative thing, is it? It's about that strong culture is about that unity of that group, whether that's in the direction of where you want to go or against it. It doesn't really matter. And breaking that down is about the being able to inspire, being able to share that vision, being able to include people in that vision. Or actually, when we talk about a resonation, is identify the people who are never going to be part of that vision. And it might be a case
most of those people will identify themselves. So I'm not a proponent of going around and saying let's do this, because they've really identified themselves. So part of the responsibility of the leader within the organization is to know that there's going to be these teams and groups and factions of the culture, but they should be working in harmony. So one of the things that I say is that if you've got individuals who say I love my team but hate my company, or somebody who says I love my company but hate my team, that's a problem. And you didn't need somebody to come in and tell you you have a problem. That should be enough of a clue that you've got a problem, because there should be congruency in what we're doing. And why I really focus on cohesion, this is the question that people ask me. They want to know, like, well, why is it such a big deal about cohesion? Because cohesion is a causal phenomenon. It's a cause and effect. It's not correlational. There's a difference in how you treat correlational data and how you treat causal data.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you to participate in an example. I'm going to ask you some questions, so there'll be no harming of Nigel in the asking of these questions. Okay, so have you experienced a rainy day?
Yes.
Do you always open an umbrella on every rainy day?
No.
Do you go to the beach?
Yes.
Have you seen umbrellas opened on the beach?
Yes.
And when you were there and the umbrellas were open, was it always raining?
No.
Good. I can create statistical relationship between umbrellas and rainy days. but I don't create a cause and effect.
Yeah.
Rainy days do not cause umbrellas to be open, and umbrellas open do not cause rainy days.
Yeah.
Cohesion is causal. It means if you infuse belonging, value, shared mutual commitment into your culture of your organization, you get performance. And the additional byproduct that you get from performance is engagement. You get the level of engagement of employee that is helpful, active, vested, and eager. And many organizational leaders are looking for these engaged employees, but somehow they have been told that they can either observe it or they need to make them happy or satisfied to get engagement. But the reality is satisfaction and happiness are correlational to engagement. If you want engagement to truly happen in your organization, and you really, and whether people are happy or not, I mean, it's up to them. It's, you know, they're going to, one moment they're happy, the next moment they're not. And I keep thinking, oh my gosh, what a mess that would be if you had to figure it out. And my mom used to tell me, she says, Troy, your job is not to make everybody happy. Just don't be the reason they're unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get to control that. So I have my responsibility, but I'm trying to control and you. Well, that goes back to the comment that you made earlier about the individual saying, look, I have influential power. I don't have any organizational power to make the culture work. You do it through influence. Well, see, all this stuff it all comes together, and it really focuses on the mindset of the leader and how that leader is going to infuse this information into the organization. And will they truly want a better predictor of behavior? And cohesion is a better predictor of behavior. The research proves it. And it's not just my research. You can go out and check 3 or 4 decades of research.
Yeah.
And what's fundamental to cohesion is transformative leadership. 6 decades of research. Those leaders who subscribe to transformational behaviors that begin with the overarching concept of focusing on others first and then self. In all of that research, the individual contributor has never suffered.
Yeah.
No other organizational leadership study can make that same claim. That is why I become so passionate about this and why I can be so assertive to individuals to say, build this cohesion into your organization. There's more information. Every time you lose an employee in your company, it takes up to 50% of their salary to replace them.
It's crazy, isn't it?
That's hardline dollars globally. Now, this is the number globally, so it's not restricted just to the US, it's global. That for dysfunctional teams, organizations spend over $7 trillion a year to correct dysfunctional teams. Whereas if they were able to really bring this leadership development into individuals. And I remind folks, and all of the leadership that I do, my online leadership course that I provide to organizations for them to make available to their employees, I say there's 3 things you got to do. You number 1 got to be teachable. Listen, if you're not going to be teachable, then it doesn't really matter. Yeah. My mantra is you don't have to know everything. You just need to be teachable.
Yeah.
And if you can build that into that concept, then already the mind is open to new ideas and new ways of thinking. The second thing is you have to be a leader. Yeah. Now you have to claim leadership. Even if you may not want to claim the title, maybe you want to be a little more humble about it. The fact is you have to own being a leader, because if you answer questions, you direct things, you do stuff, you're a leader. And the third aspect is this: if individuals within an organization would view everything that is done through the lens of the CEO, the lens of that most influential leader within the company, imagine what would happen, especially when that leader subscribed to transformational leadership.
Yeah. I can see how that leader, you've got to have a leader you're going to follow, and that leader's got to care about you, and that's it, isn't it? It doesn't, and it all the way down. And I know that we're coming up on time a little bit here, but there's just thinking for the audience, from a project management point of view, we are leaders within an organization. We're not leaders who can set that vision there, but we can with our projects, we can with our project teams. What do you see the difference of that layer, that middle management, but I think the difference between us and some other sort of line manager organization is we quite often have a transitory team. We're building new teams. We're having people come in either from other parts of the area or of the organization, sorry, or brand new into the organization who have those less than helpful supervisors previously, maybe within the same organization again, I say, or maybe outside. But how do you create cohesion at that level? How do you go about it as a project manager? Because you've got a finite amount of time to be able to get them in there, get them hitting the ground, get them performing at their best that they can do, and give them opportunities.
So again, you take the framework, whether it goes over top of the entire organization or over top of the individual small group that you have with a small team. What is the leader doing to create belonging, value, and shared mutual commitment? It's those activities that you do within the organization. So one of the ways through belonging is collaboration. In collaboration, there are two things that are required. The first is you look around the room and agree you need each other.
Yeah.
The second thing is you extend trust. You trust that these individuals can do the job.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to trust like in a toxic social environment where you give your trust and get your heart broken. I'm saying you give trust in an organization that people will be able to do their job. So you create belonging by including people. You listen to what people have to say. Don't talk so much. Ask more open-ended, non-leading questions.
Yeah.
Allow people to have self-discovery. When people have self-discovery, when you are talking about value, make sure that people are affirmed in the roles that they have and their identity. That is so important. We are very good at sometimes either recognizing the role people has or appreciating a person. But the value we get in helping you understand that your job is meaningful is when we create affirmations by bringing them together. When you tell a person that the role that they played was successful, and here's a quality about them that is important to their success of that job that they're doing, now you have an affirmation. So a very simple thing would be like this, telling a person that they did a report on time. You want to acknowledge them that they did a report. Hey, Timmy, nice job on doing the report. But the thing that I love the most about that report was how you went to the detail. You sought the truth. You went after the information to make sure that it was right before you finished it. All of a sudden, I am now affirmed because you identified my role, which was report doer, and you recognized who I was in the contribution I made to completing it. And then you don't become one-sided. That value is now full, well-rounded. And then also when I say to Timmy, by the way, you doing that report on time, that allowed Alshon, that allowed Rachel, that allowed Mary Lou to be able to do something else in the organization that wouldn't have happened had you have not done that on time. And you're creating that whole value. And so in that team, you're still doing it in a microcosmic way, as well as you might be doing it from an enterprise-wise way. And then realistically, talking about shared mutual commitments, you don't go to Timmy and Alshon and Rachel and all of them and you start to say, hey, here's your task, here's your job, simply because we have a paycheck, you should be doing it. You should be aligning their goals with the organizational goals. And if you did a good job of acquiring them, you already know that they adopt the values of the organization. So you speak to those values of the organization, and here's what the organization will do for you. And then in turn, you've now set it up for them to do what's needed for them. And those are just really some of the very, very simple things. But the one part that I will conclude with, so we'll wrap up our session for this, is what I want to be able to give the leaders and the listeners are three things that they can do in their company to help them see how much cohesion they may have. The first thing is greetings. Who does the greetings? How do the greetings happen? What do people say in greetings? Are they just sort of one of those greetings that's like, hello, how are you? Or is it a little bit more interest in who you are as a person? Do they take some difference in that? And I'll tell you why greetings are important. When I worked with, I had an opportunity to work with some of the leaders in Prague at Duke Manufacturing. And one of the things that the leaders told us when we met with them was that their employees absolutely on every survey talked about how important it was that the leadership of the company actually cared about the employees and would stop and ask them questions would get involved in things that they would do. They didn't even care that they didn't know their names. They didn't care they didn't know how many dogs they had or children or what the next celebration was. It was the fact that they got involved to ask them questions about what was happening in their lives, what were they doing, allowing them to reinvent that. The second thing that leaders should do is listen for laughter. It's not the har 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 slap your knee laughter. It's the is there a calmness? Is there a sense of camaraderie?
Yep.
Is it tense? Is it burning desires? Is there a lot of action? Or people, maybe their voices are raised? They're very excitable about things. That can tell you might have stress or burnout in your organization, and so you're not really giving individuals an opportunity to fully express and feel the value that they should have or that belonging. And then the last area is the affirmations. I spoke about that before. What are people saying about other people in the organization? Is it only the leaders complimenting? Do the employees compliment others? Do they do cross-departmental affirmations and acknowledgments, or is it all just self-contained within it? Do people only want to talk about the things that they do, or do they talk about the successes of others? That will give you a very good idea right off the bat whether you have a problem with cohesion in your organization or not. And if you do have a problem, you want to call me.
Excellent. Dr. Troy, that's fantastic. On all three of those points, I've got more, probably another half an hour's conversation on there. And this, I'd love to carry on the conversation. I'm sure we will online and things like that. And I'm sure that the listeners will want to as well. If people want to get in touch with you, find out more about Cohesion culture, what do they do? What do they do?
Well, it's really simple. It's Dr. Troy Hall, Dr. Troy Hall, and you can find me on many social media platforms under that, or you can go to drtroyhall.com and then you can connect with me there. So you can send a message to me. I'll respond to you. I'll get back to you. We'll communicate somehow, some way, and it'll work out. If you want to get my book, you can go to Amazon. You can order the book directly at Amazon. I also have a special offer for your listeners. I have a free book. They simply pay for the shipping. If so, they go to cohesionbook.com. So they go to cohesionbook.com and they can take advantage of the free book and only pay the shipping.
All right, cool. I will put all that detail in the show notes when it goes out there. And brilliant. Finally, all I have to say is, Dr. Troy, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been fascinating. It's sparked off a few ideas of things that I've been doing. The laughter one. I've got to give this anecdote. I had my team at a training session the other day. Not a training session, a first time together session. But they were doing some work through stuff. I went to wander off to take a phone call, and from 50 yards away in the office, I could hear laughter coming from the meeting room where they were, and I was delighted because the main reason for that meeting was to get them together and get them to know each other and build some build some cohesion in that team.
Build some cohesion, absolutely, into the team.
Yeah, so it really resonates me with that. So yeah, so thank you so much for coming on the show, and I'm sure it'll resonate with a lot of other people. And have a fantastic rest of your day.
Well, thank you, and I'm welcome to come back at any time. So if you want to do another version of this, or maybe you might want to have a dinner conversation, I'm open to that. Since I now was here for lunch, I'll be there for dinner.
Brilliant, superb. Thank you, Dr. Troy, and look after yourself.
Thank you.
Cheers now. Bye.